Okay. So, no break time, sorry. So, EPAG assessment framework again. Are you ready?
Yes.
In place of Amy, because Amy is going back home today, so she couldn't join us.
Yeah. So I will replace Amy. I'll try to replace her. So the goal of the pilot impact assessment framework was to measure the impact of patient engagements in ERNs. And why we need it? Because we need to better understand our role and goals as EPAGs, to identify how to achieve our goals, and to explain the value of our involvement by measuring and assessing the progress over time. It is a learning process for our internal audience, like EPAG advocates, network coordinators, or clinical leads. And it provides accountability for our external audience, like board of member states or other ERN stakeholders. Next slide, please. We develop the framework in 3 steps. The first one was to build a narrative of change, and we've done this organizing face-to-face workshop with EPAGs steering committee on September 2019 in Brussels. We had 20 participants from different ERNs. All were patient representatives. And the next step was to identify the measures during November 2019 until March 2020. And then the last one was to capture the evidence and the pilot framework between April and December 2020. And our main goals, measures, and questions that are asked in our survey are on the next slide, please. I will not insist on the process because I would like to stay more on the results of the first survey. So the goals, we identify 3 goals: to improve the quality of care, diagnosis, and treatment, and then to ensure patient-centric ERNs that meet community needs. And the third one, to ensure a good level of awareness among the patient community about ERNs and the work that is done. And the measures that we identify for each goal were, for instance, for the first goal, to improve the quality of care, diagnosis, and treatment, the measure was to be listed as co-author of consensus statements and clinical practice guidelines. And we had to collect title of paper, number of meetings, where the EPAG have participated, how many documents. That were the initial questions. Then for the second goal, to ensure patient-centric ERN that meet our community needs, the measures identified were the percentage of the ERN working groups where the EPAGs advocates are participating as members. Then patient representatives are members of the ERN Registry governance structure or ERN Registry working groups. The next one, the number of patient journeys or surveys to capture patients' needs that have been discussed with ERN clinicians. The next measure was the percentage of subthematic areas where patient needs have been captured through the patient journey. And then we have some measures, perception of the level of satisfaction of how EPAG advocates and clinicians are working together as a team to advance the ERN goals. And the percentage of outcome measures identified with the input of EPAG advocates, or the number of posters and presentations of ERN at national level or international meetings during conferences or workshops. For the next goal, to ensure a good level of awareness among the patient community about ERNs and their work, we have two measures: perception on how the EPAG has organized the outreach to its wider patient community, how he disseminates the information. And the next one is perception on how the EPAG has organized the outreach to its wider patient community, capturing feedback and patients. I can't see what I've written there. Capturing feedback from patients, EPAG. And the next one. So for a while, we were thinking that we were organizing ourselves to collect the information, and we had responsibles for each measures, people nominated responsible persons for each measure, and met several times to discuss about how to collect all this information. But recently, we have the other two. Probably I should mention that the framework is developed and implemented in 3 of the ERN ITHACA, RITA, and Reconet. And our colleague from RITA have developed a survey to collect all this information, and we agreed that we should have the same approach. And we also develop a survey. And until now, we had 7 answers from our EPAGs. And here are the results. So, for instance, the first question was, are you participating in any ERN working group in your role as an EPAG advocate? And 5 out of 7 of the EPAGs answered that yes, they are participating in the working group, and 2 are not participating. And 3 working groups, among the most important comments of the EPAGs during the questionnaire were that 3 working groups have invited EPAGs to their meetings, and sorry, I can't see. And 4 working groups are not inviting EPAGs to their meetings. And they said would have been interested to attend meetings, but he assumed that they did not feel that he could make a contribution. The EPAG could make a contribution. And nobody answered that we were not invited to any working group meeting. The next question was, are there any clinical practice guidelines or clinical decision-making support tools were developed by the ERN and published with your name? And of course, we have 1 member of this work group, which is Sue, and she answered yes, and 6 of us answered no, because we are not in that working group and did not participating in developing of clinical practice guideline. So 1 of the EPAGs is acknowledged as co-author, and 1 is under development and not yet published. The next question was, are you involved in the ERN ITHACA board? And 4 of us of EPAG out of 7 answered yes, and 3 no. We had previously 5 members of the patient council, and now we are 4. The next question was, are you a member of the ERN Itaca Registry working group? one of out of 7 EPAGs is member of the ERN ITHACA Registry Working Group. And among the comments we got that most parents groups I know of would be grateful if we could have a better idea of prevalence, even if that was the only thing we could have. So most of the EPAGs would like to be involved. And also we had comments from 2 of the EPAGs that they were involved in the design or in the preparation of the application for Iliad registry for funding. And the next question was, are you a member of the ERN ITHACA registry governance structure? 2 of the EPAGs are answered yes, and 5 answered no. And 1 have answered that I have contributed on the work for application for funding of the ERN registry with patients' perspective. The next slide, please.
Sorry, Dorica, to interrupt you. In the previous slide, it was about the patient journey. It was the very last question.
Yes, I think I can't see all the.
Yeah, exactly. That's the same for me. It's just, did you conduct patient journey and survey to capture patient needs? And I think the rest is, and to discuss this with the clinicians. But then we don't see the entire comments. But I think this one is interesting because of course you've been active. I mean, 5 EPAGs have been actively developing the patient journey.
Yeah.
And
yes, so.
If I can comment on 2 points.
Yes.
For practical guidelines, I think that involvement should grow when the guidelines will be more mature. So this has been launched by Raoul and Cam about 1 year ago, and I think at this time maybe you have not yet been involved, because I'm not. We will know tomorrow where it's really at what level of development it is currently, but it's probably because in fact you are a little bit too early in the process of writing. And the same for the registries. Currently the registry is in the beta phase for IT aspects, not at all for the content. So it doesn't work because it's not finished. So of course you are not involved just because there's nothing to be involved with. It's currently purely IT stuff.
Okay.
So it should, your answer should change by 1 year.
Yeah, for sure. But this is the result for the moment. And regarding the patient journeys, I would have comment. Even if we consider we were active and we have 5 patient journeys developed, and because Itaca has the specificity of having so many different diagnoses, it's not, this is a topic that can be compared with the other ERNs. So if we will ever try to compare the results from different ERNs on impact assessment framework, I think for this topic we should be careful if one ERN is have 10 disease and the other one have 10,000. So it's very difficult to say that we still have, as we said before, we were joking that we have 5, we just need 5,000 maybe more to develop.
Good work.
So more than 10 years, I think.
Oh,
The next question was if am I satisfied working as a team with the clinicians of my ERN to advance the ERN goals? And the possible answer were never, strongly disagree, rarely disagree, often agree, or every time strongly agree. And I think it's good that 4 out of 7 have answered that they agree that they are working as a team with the clinicians, and they agree with this, and 1 said strongly agree. And 2 out of 7 have answered that rarely and disagree with this. And the main comments were that I would like to know more about what ways we can help with patient input. And the other comment was improvement on communication with respect to expectations and setting goals forward. The next question was, how often do you disseminate information on your ERN activities to your wider patient community? And 3 out of 7 have answered that often, they do this often, and 4 said that they do this rarely. And the main comments were, I used to present the ERN at all our events at national level, centers of expertise. This is my comment, in fact. National Alliance members, European Conference, Rare Disease Day, or Rare Disease School for Journalists. And the next comment was that very difficult to organize a wide communication. Most of the association do not know nothing about ERN. And I agree with this, but this is why we need to communicate to all our events about this and to inform patients and associations that we collaborate with at national level about the work in the ERN. Of course, it's different for those who are in National Alliance too, or they are leaders of the National Alliance. It's easier to share this information, but on the other hand, we all have to try more. The next question was, how often do you reach out to your wider community to capture feedback? And here, 2 of us have said that they strongly agree, so every time. 2 are doing it often, and 3 are doing it rarely, but none of us said never, which is also positive. And the main comment was that capturing feedback and patient needs is a continuous process for our organization, and I think this is good. So I think these are the main results that we got until now, but it was not so long time, and yeah.
It should have been a good idea to have more answers than that. And about the dissemination, as we ask all professionals to do it, you could acknowledge Itaca in your publication journey and let us know. That would be good for both of you, both of us, I would say.
Okay.
Dorica, did you see big differences between ERNs? Well, you have only 3 here, but do you intend to explain?
So we are the first one.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry.
As coordinators, we have very few view about how EPAGs and ERNs interact. This happens within ERNs, but between ERNs in the ERN meetings, this is a subject that is almost never discussed. So it could be interesting for you to maybe to contact the patient council or the equivalent of patient council in the 24 ERNs, and perhaps to produce a trans-ERN document that you could present to European community, or to the European Commission, sorry, at one of our meetings. Because I do imagine that
it's a good idea.
There could be very strong differences between ERNs in some cases, because some of them are more dealing with acute situations, like the one on surgery. They don't follow really patients. For many of them, they just see it once and they have complex surgery. So we can imagine that they have less long-term follow-up. But it could be interesting to see that, because it's really something that is overlooked in the ERN community of coordinators.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. There is a high difference between ERNs and in the way the EPAGs are working together, or they are working with the clinicians. It's different. We can see it when we meet together and discuss. And probably among the three ERN that are collecting this information will be differences too. We are the first one that present because it's the annual meeting, but we are still waiting the other EPAGs to answer. And we will provide a report about it.
Good.
And compare with the other two, of course.
Yeah, already. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, we're gonna have. Sorry, I just jumped in the conversation. So we're gonna have a call next week with the other two. So the three piloting this survey, and we will start to a little bit to contrast the results, and then we will do a report. We will send it also to all of you, because I think to you as a ERN coordination team, that might be something interesting, of course. And we try next year to extend this pilot. Of course, we will maybe change some of the measures, some of the questions, according to, of course, to the experience that we had with this pilot, but of course also from your perspective as a clinicians, as a coordination team, maybe you also want to make any comments or any suggestions and so on. And based on that, we will try to extend this assessment framework to the other EPAGs groups, so to the other 21. We will see. I mean, it's not, it's a kind of, again, on a voluntary basis. So we don't know if all of them will be willing to participate, but we will try. And as you say, Alain, that would be really interesting to really present the results across the majority of the ERN ITHACA, and maybe why not to present it to the European Commission at some point.
Because if you do it on a larger scale, I think one of the points that should be clearly be used or mentioned on the results is the number of potential EPAGs that exist compared to the number of places that could be used. For instance, we could not have we could have 5,000 different EPAGs if each of these other has its own, and we could of course not have 5,000 people in the board. So it could be interesting to have these also as a measure, because if you express it in percent, the most successful we would come, the less people in percent will be truly participating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the size, the particular, the specificities of each of the ERNs has to be taken into account. Yes, it's true. Yes, Dorica. Sorry.
Oh, I just wonder if you have any questions or any from patients. I mean, from the EPAGs, if there are any comments, any questions. Those who filled the questionnaires, but also those who didn't, maybe.
You should send it back again to all the patient community we have in Itaca, because only 7 answers, it's very, very low.
It's true, Anne, but initially the goal of this survey was to send it to the EPAG advocates.
Right, but even so, you don't have all the person who are inside of the work group,
Yeah, we have missing, also to be honest, we are missing a few people, it's true. I mean, and this is a kind of initial results. We still need to,
I know, it's a very interesting pilot anyway.
And but the thing is, we also gave a very short deadline
it was a few days.
Sure, so we really thanks very much your answers and your contribution, because it's true that we've been a little bit in a rush. But of course we will make sure that everybody has a voice and everybody is represented in this survey. And the comments, of course, are there, and maybe then why not we can extend it to the patient committee. But the first exercise was to have the perspectives of the EPAG advocates. We are actively, involved in the Itaca network or in the other networks. Just to answer the question of Sue on the chat, do we know that the ratio of the numbers of patients who we are represented to other ERNs are? The number of patients, so you mean the patient community, Sue? I assume.
I mean, you know, well, I mean, obviously some of the rare syndromes we might be representing, there might only be a handful of people, but some, or one even, in the, but some are much larger. And I just wondered what sizes of the other ERN, if it's comparable, you know, with all the ones we're representing, although we might only have one in each of the two, even we had only one in a lot of those 2,000 or so, is that more? Or even though we've got so many things we're representing, are we still actually a small population of patients that we could be helping, or the families?
Yeah, to be honest, now it's a little bit difficult to have these exact numbers of patients represented. We are, I mean, all in all, across the 24 EPAGs, all in all, they represent around more than 1,000 patient organizations, but it's you know, it's a very general number. But we are doing this exercise, and we will do it more early next year to really map these patients and to know exactly in each of the ERN how many patient organizations are involved, how many patients they are represented, and which disease they represent. So is we can say now it's across, you know, across the 24, it's about 1,000 patient organizations, but we need to be a little bit more precise, and we will do it.
Yeah. One challenge of this is the number of patients for a given ERN who cannot have a diagnosis. For instance, for Itaca, I think more than half of the patients, even if they are in a country where everything is available as test, won't be diagnosed. So there are certain countries where there's EPAGs for patients without a diagnosis, like Swan, or there's a similar in France. But I think first that this does not exist in all countries, and patients without a diagnosis willing to go to those EPAGs are probably quite small compared to the number of patients that could be in these, because they should represent half of the case as of the patients in an ERN. Maybe it's different in other ERNs because they are more narrow objective. I think Vassern, for instance, has very big disorders which are well defined, and probably they have less family groups and less patients without a diagnosis. But for Itaca, it's a real problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, I can imagine. There is also, thank you, Anya, for that. There is also another comment from Jerry on the chat. He said that this assessment framework was maybe a little bit too early in the process. And maybe we should have been doing this in 2022, which is actually the end of the 5 years of the ERN functioning. So I don't know what you think about that. I mean, I agree, I understand, Jerry, what you said, and I think it's, of course, as you said, the contribution and the EPAG of the ERN will grow up as we learn and work together. And as Alan said, of course, as well, the guidelines, the registries are also working now, and maybe it's also too early to kind of work, to think about, or to kind of assess what we've done, because what was done, because it's again, it's too early and this activity has started already. But I think it's still good to have this kind of assessment at the end, almost at the end of the first 5 years of functioning, and to already maybe identify some gaps or needs, you know, and or to prioritize as well, maybe what should be the best, both for the clinicians and for the patients, and where maybe you should maybe, you know, prioritize your work as a team, you know. So, but I don't know, what do you think, or the others?
If I can make a comment, I think both of you are right. I think it's too early to take any serious conclusion about that. but at the same time, it's a good exercise. It's a kind of a pilot study. And because if you share this pilot study with other ERNs, it could also bring the ERN coordinators to question themselves about those questions. So to increase your presence. So I think you cannot do anything with the current results. It's too short, and indeed some aspects are like the registries for among 24 ERNs, only 5 have a registry for more than 5 years. The 19 others are just trying to build it then. So you would have probably difference between the 5 pioneers and the 19 others. But I think it's a good idea to push through that. But don't use the results as a fact, because in fact it's probably really too early.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's also why we need to put them in the context of each ERN, the progress of each activities, and the size of each ERN, etc., etc. I mean, as you said, they are not like a raw that data, but they need to be put on in the context, and of course we need to explain them. That's why we also need this, the comments, and we're going to explain this, of course, in the final report, and we'll take this into account, of course, when we suggest extend this to the other IPACs and ERNs.
Thomas has raised his hand. Good.
Yeah, I just want to once again put on the table our proposal, because we are officially EPAC advocates, but we are more representing Gdansk, which is not, as far as I understand, official ERN member. So I was checking the survey under the link, and I think partially for sure we could share our point of view, experience, and reply for the questions. So if you would decide that Kasia and myself, I can speak by myself, we are open to fill in the survey as a new EPACs, and to, let's say, especially that we are taking into account 2020, which is almost half of the year we are in the EPAC as a EPAC advocates. So that is an open question, and I would suggest to repeat the test, I don't know, every biannual, every 2 years, or every year, just to see the progress or regress, hopefully not, but the comparison in a longer perspective, year by year, or 2 years, will bring other, I would think, additional value, added value, and information how we develop, how we put our accents and perform better and develop our activity. So this is, from the point of view of constant development, a best way to observe in a longer perspective, to repeat the same questionnaire and repeat, because it gives us a comparison.
I think it's a learning process for us, us as pilots, and our to observe if there are some things that have to be improved, and then to upscale it to other ERN, and of course to repeat and capture the evidence over the time, because this is in fact the goal of the framework assessment.
Yeah, just a comment about the fact that Gdansk is not in Itaca. It's administratively true, because you will reach us normally in July only, but of course for all activities of Itaca, all patients, all centers that have been acknowledged by us are open to come already. You can participate to everything on an undercover manner, but it's really not a problem for us.
Thank you for that, and we appreciate, and you know, a little bit joking and but serious at the same time. We don't look on a red tape bureaucracy, because we are acting as from the very beginning to be proudly an EPAC and ERN member. So thank you for this also information, and for sure we will then put our input to the survey. Thank you.
Everybody is invited already, unofficially.
And Thomas, I think Kasia, I was thinking about, you can put as a comment on the survey that you've joined the group recently, you know. I mean, we know you, of course, and we know you've joined, you have a more limited experience as an EPAG advocate, but I think your voice is also very, very interesting, and of course we want to take this into account. But just, you know, put on the comments also that, yeah, we will, because we as I said, we need to put some context in all these comments. So it's good that we remind also the level of experience in a way.
We will make anonymous comment about the being not long in EPAG. But of course, I thank you. We will do so.
No problem. Yeah, just the level. Yeah.
So do you think we could finish this part? Do you have any sufficient comment?
Yeah.
Okay.